What is up, Packers fans? Welcome in to an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thank you, as always, for being here. It is great to be back. For some of you, it may not have felt like I was gone at all. I had episodes for you guys this past week plus, lots of guests, and then, of course, our AI episode yesterday, which I had recorded in advance. For those of you who do not know, I was in Spain for the last week plus. We spent a handful of days in Tenerife and then a couple days in Madrid. It was phenomenal. Thank you all for all of your support and the ability to get away for a little bit as we get ready for training camp to pick up here in a couple weeks. Was good to get some rest and relaxation. Cannot recommend both places enough. Both were awesome and exceeded my expectations. So both should be top of list if you're looking to travel overseas. Tenerife, right on the water, 85 degrees, beautiful ocean, no bugs, no anything. It was just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and really, really enjoyed Madrid. A little bit hot, 95 degrees and whatnot. So it was a little bit different to navigate, but still had a blast and really, really enjoyed my time there as well. So again, thank you for, again, allowing me to take some time off, again, recharge the batteries a little bit. And it is really great to be back. I was talking to Marcus Eversole earlier today, and he's like, is it really great to be back? I'm like, oh, obviously there's advantages and disadvantages. Vacation is fun, but there is something about just being home, your own bed, the normal routine of everything that you're used to, and just kind of getting back in the swing of things. And I know for one, I'm very happy to be back chatting Packers here with you guys today. Before we get started, shout out to our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members, CAGRITHURHAN, Kargrithuan7, and then Luke Popovich, Kenneth Oliver, Preston Schmidt, Ellie Wittet, Dustin Wanless, and new All-Pro member Griff Hen Bly. Thank you guys so much for signing up. Appreciate that a ton. There is a few things that I missed while I was gone. Nothing too crazy. Couple things that I'll go over really quick here. Jermichael Finley's son commits to the University of Notre Dame. I'm sorry, what? I know I'm old, but come on, Jermichael Finley's kid's already enrolling in Notre Dame. It's too soon. It's too soon. Feels like Jermichael Finley should still be playing, and not that his son should be already getting ready to play at Notre Dame. Congratulations to his son. That's awesome. But yeah, that seems crazy. Josh Jacobs was ranked as the number 6 running back in one of the lists. I don't know. It was ESPN's running back list. It feels about right. I didn't have any major issues. Thought you could maybe bump him up a spot or two. You could make an argument for maybe moving him down a spot, but I think number 6, anywhere really between 3 and 7, I think is within the realm of reason. So I didn't have any major issue with that spot for Josh Jacobs. PFF had Green Bay ranked as the 14th best offensive line. There are some absurd offensive lines that are ahead of them on that list, which is ridiculous. But that one seems very, very low in the whole scheme of things. Doesn't really matter, but that definitely felt low from PFF. I think Sam Munson and Steve put out their list of top 25 players under the age of 25. No Green Bay Packers made the list. Tucker Kraft could have maybe been in the conversation. I definitely think Edgerrin Cooper should have been on that list. So that would have been the one for Green Bay that I think probably should have been on there, even if it was number 25. But those are the two that probably have the biggest gripe with that list. No major ones there. No, like, oh my God, I can't believe this Packer didn't make it. But definitely probably would have had Edgerrin Cooper on that list. Mark Murphy penned his farewell to the Packers and their fans over on Packers.com. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, highly recommend doing so. One of his last moments as president and CEO of the Green Bay Packers. Of course, that ceremony of the handing over of the reins will take place at the shareholders meeting coming up in a couple weeks here. And then the Packers announced as well that they're going to be coming out with new throwback jerseys. Those will be announced during training camp as well. My take, as always, on jerseys are I love the home jerseys. I love the away jerseys. I don't want anything really to change with either of those. Whatever you want to do with your other 2 random jerseys or however many you get per year, if you want to do a throwback, if you want to do whatever throwback you want to do and pay homage to, if you want to do a completely crazy, absurd whiteout, blackout, green out. I don't care. Go have fun with your 2 random alternative jerseys every single year. Sell them, do whatever, whatever you want with them at the Packers Pro Shop. Wear them a couple times. I don't know. I don't care at all. To me, it's not sacred that you have to have these same jerseys every single week or anything like that. I think it's cool every once in a while to see them in a different jersey. But like I said, 1 to 2 games per year, not going to get too upset. Even if I think that the alternative jersey is ugly or I hate it or whatever, it's fine. Somebody else might love it. Go do that for a couple games. I have no problem with that. But as long as you're keeping the home jerseys the way that they are and the away jerseys the way that they are and the helmets and everything like that, they are perfect to me as is. Keep those for the vast majority of the games. And then, like I said, go have fun with whatever throwbacks or alternative jerseys or whiteouts that you want to do and anything else. And you will not hear me complain one iota, because that stuff to me is just irrelevant, fun, and whatever. And even if I don't like it, somebody else probably is going to love it. So those are kind of my takeaways from this past week. I don't think there was anything else noteworthy that I really missed. And I was putting together some thoughts for today's episode. And I have ideas and stuff that we're certainly going to get to over the course of the next couple of weeks. But coming back from over a week off with just some time on my own to think and write down and jot some notes as I kind of was thinking of stuff randomly on 8-hour plane rides and stuff like that, I figured I would do a little bit more of just a unique episode today. Just the wandering mind of a Packers podcaster that's had a little bit too much time on his hands, maybe a couple times too many, drinks to kind of go through some thoughts of these while I was, on vacation, and just spew some things that have been on my mind. Last year for members, I did 10 things I think at this point, somewhere around this point. And somebody in a chat recently asked me to do one similarly. So I thought I would kind of merge those 2 ideas into one and give you 10 things that are randomly on my mind, mostly from a Packers standpoint, some from an NFL standpoint, as we get ready for training camp coming up in a couple weeks, and just an off-season smorgasbord of random topics and conversations. No mailbag or anything like that, but just kind of a grab bag of topics that I've been wanting to discuss or get to, or like I said, that have been on top of mind. So here we go without further ado. Number 1 on my list of 10 things, and it's going to be very much conjoined with number 2. But number 1 is that you absolutely should care how the Green Bay Packers use every single one of their resources. Every NFL team has a finite amount of resources. They have a certain amount of salary cap space, of cash they can give up front via signing bonuses, money they can borrow from future years, 1st through 7th round draft choices. For those of you who don't know, you only have 3 years of those. In the NBA, you have 7. You can trade 7 years worth of draft picks in the NBA right now. There are 2032 draft picks being traded and swapped and things like that. The NFL, it's only 3. 2025's draft is over. So 26, 27, 28. Those are the only draft picks that you can trade at the moment. So you have 3 years worth of draft picks, salary cap space you can borrow from in the future, any assets that are currently on your team, the players that are on your team that you could trade away. There is a finite amount of those resources. You only have so many players on your team. You only have so many roster spots available. You have only so much cash to spend and only so much credit card to utilize if you are going to borrow from future salary caps. Simple as that, right? So I've heard people say, very smart people that I respect and care about, say, hey, stop caring about how the Packers spend their money. And I think that's the wrong way to look about it. I think the idea of it is wise, of like, hey, it's not your money. Don't care if the Packers give a X amount of signing bonus to Aaron Banks or whomever, because you're not the one that's writing those checks. And that's totally true. And again, I get that overall sentiment, but I very much care how the team that I most in the world want to be successful utilizes their finite amount of resources, their roster spots, their draft picks, their money that they have to spend. I want them to use it the right way, because it's not unlimited. They don't have a finite amount of first round picks. They don't have an infinite amount of first round picks, an infinite amount of money to spend. they have to utilize their resources wisely. And bad contracts will come back to bite you, and bad draft picks will come back to haunt you. And so that's why we, I think, get very excited come free agency. Why we get extremely excited via the NFL draft is to see who Green Bay utilizes those resources on, because there's only so many that you're going to get to see, during any given season that they're going to spend money on or spend draft picks on. And you're hoping, upon all hope, that one, that maybe they went out and got a guy that you wanted, but two, more importantly, that they made the right decisions, that they got guys that were going to help the team hopefully get to and win a Super Bowl. There are only, again, so many options available to you. So this idea that, you should not worry about how Green Bay spends their money from a pure banking standpoint, that's true. I will never care. Like Aaron Banks. Like Aaron Banks is a great example of this, right? 4 years, 77 million. Go get your money, Aaron Banks. I'm not upset that Aaron Banks has 77 million that he's going to get, well, whatever he ends up actually getting for how many years he actually plays in Green Bay. But if he gets all 77 million, I don't really care about that. I don't care whose bank account that money is in. That doesn't bother me, and I'm not concerned about that one iota. I do care that the percentage of the salary cap that they're giving to Aaron Banks hopefully turns out to be the right usage of that money, because they spent a huge chunk of it on a left guard who has been solid, but maybe not great in San Francisco so far. So again, this idea that you should not care about how the Packers use their money or spend their money or their resources, I think is absurd. But that brings us into number two. Once those resources are utilized, cheer on those players. And it's better to be wrong than it is to be right and the player sucks. Let me put this into perspective. I think Jordan Morgan's a great example of this. When the draft comes around, we all get excited and we want the Packers to draft players that we want them to draft. It makes the whole draft so much better. It's why we do all the mock drafts ahead of time and read all the draft books and hopefully watch the Pack a Day podcast to learn about all these prospects and all these sort of things that get you all the information, or at least as much as you can handle ahead of the draft, to get to know these players better so that you go into the draft knowing who you want the Packers to take. And that makes that process fun. The draft is like a game. It's entertaining. There are wins and losses and swings throughout that weekend that feel like you are either winning or losing that weekend. Now, we know deep down that we have no idea. We're not going to know for years whether or not some of these players turned out or not. But we have our players that we like and we have our players that we don't like. And we want the Packers to take the players that we like and avoid the players that we don't like. So when Jordan Morgan gets taken in round one, it's a disappointment to people, especially when somebody like Cooper DeJean is on the board. And a lot of people really wanted Cooper DeJean, and a lot of people really did not want Jordan Morgan. I was not as heavy or as high on the Cooper DeJean train. I thought right where he went in the mid second round, early second round was right about right for DeJean. Not even late first, I would have been, understanding of as well. He clearly played amazing his rookie year. Jordan Morgan, I had a mid-ish second round grade, early to mid, probably closer to mid second round grade on, and was one of the players that ahead of the draft, I was like, I kind of hope Green Bay avoids this player. I think there are some flaws on tape that just give me a little bit of unease if you're going to spend a first round draft pick on a player like that had those flaws on tape in college. But then what happens, and from my point of view, my perspective, when I'm talking about said player, in this case, Jordan Morgan, I'm not going to all of a sudden go and be like, well, actually, he's great, and this is why you should love him. No. My evaluation before he was a Packer still is important, still stands. Like that is almost a better evaluation because you're not looking through it with rose-tinted glasses or anything like that, or in this case, green and gold tinted glasses. You had your evaluation of the player, and that's what it was. But here's the thing, and I think here's where it gets clouded and sometimes convoluted, and I think sometimes just negative. When Jordan Morgan became a Packer, I immediately didn't care that, I was hoping that he wasn't going to be a Packer in round one. As a fan, I want him to succeed. I want him to do well. I don't care, like, even if I loved Cooper DeJean, right? And Of course, there's always a piece of you as a draft nick or as somebody who follows the draft closely that wants your players to be right, that you want to show that, hey, I really wanted Cooper DeJean. Look, Cooper DeJean was amazing his first year. I didn't want Jordan Morgan. Look, he barely played, and when he did, he was just fine. I would rather be wrong and cheer on that player to be successful than to be right to say, I told you so. Once they're a Packer, it's better to cheer these guys on and cheer for your own self to be wrong in that evaluation than it is to be like, see, told you, Jordan Morgan sucks. I would so much rather he just ends up being a Hall of Famer and be like, man, yep, missed on that one, than to be like, yep, totally knew it. Totally knew he just wasn't going to be up to what you were going to spend a first round pick on. And I feel like that turning of the page, it's same thing with, going back to Aaron Banks for a moment. Maybe it's not the 4 year $77 or $77 million contract that I would have handed out. Maybe not the check I would have written. But now that he's a Packer, I don't care what resources they used anymore. I have a take on it originally of whether or not that was the right use of resources or not. But now that he's a Packer, I just want him to succeed. So for these players, like once that deal is done, whether it's Rashawn Gary's contract extension or Kenny Clark's contract extension, a first round pick on Jordan Morgan over Cooper DeJean or whoever it might be, my desire to see them succeed is far above my desire to get my evaluation right as a draft analyst or as even just a fan of the draft or anything like that. I feel so many times people want to prove their priors right and say, haha, I told you Jordan Morgan wasn't going to be. Jordan Morgan, we have no idea on yet. He looked like he was going to win the starting right guard job in camp. If he was ahead of Sean Ryan, that's a good sign because Sean Ryan was playing pretty good football. When he got on the field with a injured shoulder, I might add, he was mostly fine, slightly below average. But for a rookie, I would say that's average to above average. If you can hang as a rookie at any offensive line position, especially one that you haven't played before, you played left tackle all in college and now you're playing right guard. Not only are you switching positions, you're switching sides. That's a big deal. Now try doing it with a bum shoulder. That's a tough assignment to handle. I think Jordan Morgan's going to be a good football player. And it's not like I was like, yep, 6th round grade on Jordan Morgan. I had an early to mid 2nd round grade on him. They spent the 23rd, 25th, whatever it was, draft pick on him. It's not that far away. And we know that offensive linemen tend to go ahead of where they were expected. We saw the same thing with Anthony Belton in round 2 this year. So these two are coupled together. My first one is you should absolutely, as a fan of your team, whether it's in baseball, maybe different in baseball if you're a fan of the Dodgers or something, but for the most part, whether you're a fan of baseball, hockey, football, Packers in that case, or whoever it might be, you absolutely should care how your team utilizes their finite resources. But once that player is signed, sealed, and delivered and is on your team, let's just hope that they live up to the expectations of that contract instead of cheering against them or almost celebrating when they get hurt and can't show that they are good enough, whatever that might be. I would just much rather be wrong and much rather my evaluation be crappy and go back and figure out how I can do better on my evaluation moving forward than getting it right and having the Packers miss on a player. I think Jordan Morgan and Aaron Banks are going to be good players for Green Bay. Did they maybe overpay from a draft capital standpoint, from a monetary standpoint? Probably a little bit, but I also understand the need to build up that offensive line and how important that is. You don't want to get into a situation where you've got a really bad offensive line, and sometimes got to eat your vegetables, take an offensive lineman early, spend a little bit more maybe than you wanted to really fortify and solidify that offensive line, and that's exactly what Green Bay did. Number 3 on my list of random musings, I freaking hate injuries. Man, I wish that you could take the Madden slider and turn injuries off. And there's so many reasons for this. First of all, is it just ruins a huge part of the year. Some of the best players in the league are going to get hurt this year, and we're not going to get to watch them play. Second is that there are going to be 3-4 teams pretty much every single year that just get the kiss of death. Just injury after injury after injury. The 49ers were a great example this past year. And there's just nothing you're going to be able to do. You're just screwed before the season even starts. You're going to have so many injuries that it's almost impossible to overcome it. And that is brutal. And you have to just hope every year that your team is not the team that gets the kiss of death and has 30 bazillion injuries to all of your star players and can't compete because of it. Now, Green Bay has done a really great job of building so much impressive depth and a coaching staff that can bring in Malik Willis in a couple weeks and put in a new offense specifically for him and go out and get wins in the NFL. But injuries suck huge from that regard. And I really wish that there would be a way to minimize them or limit them in a more significant way. But here's the other one. This is just kind of another just general complaint. And my apologies today for being on a little bit of a soapbox. As soon as we get into this situation where a player gets hurt, there is this set of fans that are immediately jumping on the player. Oh, guy's injury prone. Number one ability is availability. If you can't get on the field, get off my team. And there's a piece of that from time to time that is probably true. There are probably guys that could maybe play here or there that aren't playing, that are going full diva and whatever the case may be. The hard part is unless there's a report from the team or we get a real solidified report from a really well sourced, journalist or whatever, we don't know who that is. We don't know if Jair could have played or could not have played. We don't know in that story if Green Bay's the bad guy and Jair's the good guy, or if Jair's the bad guy and Green Bay's the good guy, or if it's just a victim of circumstance and there's no good guy or bad guy on either side. Just an injured player, nothing anyone could have done any differently. Same thing with Christian Watson. Same thing with every injury. We have no idea. And it sucks when players get hurt. I know that much. But to blame the player is a really ridiculous step in most situations because A, we just don't know. And B, it's really like 99% of the time of no fault of their own, other than that they're working extremely hard to either get back from one injury and they re-aggravate it, or they work back from an injury and they injure something else because they're overcompensating for it, or it's just bad luck. Sometimes you just get stepped on the wrong way. This is a violent sport, a physical sport. You're going to have some things go wrong. And now you're having everyone running 4.340s and cutting on a dime at 240 pounds and makes it really, really difficult on the body. And what I've talked about with Justin Mosqueda as well, I see it in youth soccer already with like kids working so much, so many days a week on turf and the wear and tear adds up. By the time you're in your 20s, you have just to get to that point to where you're at, you had to put so many hours in that your body's already so used and so like fragile when you get to that level. Now you're putting, again, 4.340 and going against some of the most physical, fast, violent athletes in the world. Yeah, there's going to be injuries. So I hold nothing against Christian Watson or Jair Alexander or name any other injured player that's been on the team. Maybe I'm gullible. Maybe I'm the sucker here. I assume that if they could be out on the field and playing in the games, they would want to do so. And for the most part, that is the biggest consensus in the league is like, you do all of this to play in the games. That's still the most fun part. And I get there's some violence there that you've got to navigate through and it's going to have some wear and tear. And if you're banged up, maybe you don't want to play in that game. But for the most part, players sign up and are in this whole thing to go out and play football. It's what they want to do. The practices, maybe not, but the games, absolutely, they want to be out there. So this idea, again, that, players are not wanting to play through it or whatever the narrative might be, I just wish it would all go away. I wish the players could just play, but I don't know how to judge one way or the other if a player is capable of playing or not. I'm certainly not a doctor. Even if I was, I have no access to medical records. So to hold that against anyone feels ridiculous to me. And it just feels like a uninformed complaint when we don't know the whole story one way or the other.
Hey friends, I'm so excited to tell you about this new game-changing product that I've been using before a big night out. It's called pre-alcohol. Now, Zbiotics pre-alcohol prebiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered prebiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of that byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down, so just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, to drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Now listen, I get it. I was a bit skeptical about pre-alcohol initially myself, but I've now used it for a bachelor party, the college basketball tournament, and recently for a friend's epic 40th birthday party, and I'm telling you, it's the real deal. And guess what? Summer is here, which means more opportunities to celebrate the warm weather. And before that backyard barbecue brew, the glass of Pinot watching the sunset at the beach, or a cocktail by the campfire, do not forget your Zbiotics pre-alcohol. Drink one before drinking and wake up feeling great and ready to take on the next day and all that summer has to offer. So go to zbiotics.com/packaday to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code packaday. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/packaday and use code packaday at checkout for 15% off. Make sure to support our sponsors and use that code PACKADAY.
All right. Number 4. So far, I've got, you should absolutely care about how the Packers use their resources. Number 2, once they use those resources, just be a fan of the player. And again, I'm not saying to go out and buy their jersey or anything, but let's be supportive at that point. You're not going to change it anyway, right? Better to be wrong than get it right and the Packers miss on a player. Number 3 is I hate injuries. Number 4, I think I was wrong about more regular season games. I was one of the very staunch supporters for a very long time of like, what do you mean? You could get rid of 2 preseason games and do 2 regular season games instead? Yeah. Why would anyone not want that? You're taking 2 meaningless preseason games and putting 2 regular season games instead? This is the most obvious decision in the world. And you need to add some bye weeks in and probably a bye weekend and make some changes to the schedule and things like that. But of course, makes all the sense. Why would you? There's something about the 16 game season that to me was, looking back at it, was a little bit more perfect. 17 already seems just one game too much. Feels like the injuries add up a little bit more. Feels like you have so many teams come that 17th game in week 18 that have absolutely nothing to play for. It feels like if we had an 18th game, we're going to get a little bit more of even this like tanking or teams that just have nothing to remotely care about at that point in time. And I kind of like the 9-7, 8-8, 7-9, 6-10, 10-6 records, and just felt a little bit more even and right. And it feels like every game is a little less special when you have 2 more of them, which we're eventually going to get. We're eventually going to go to 18 games. So somebody was a very staunch supporter of an 18 game season, 17, heck, give me 20 and have no preseason games. I do think the loss of preseason game, 1 already, and I think 2 eventually, but if that comes to fruition, does hurt the product. Makes it so that players don't have quite the opportunity to make a 53-man roster like they did before. Some of those back of the roster guys. I think the quality of play in week 1 is certainly gone down because teams just aren't playing their players in preseason anymore. Add in the lack of practice time and you get a worse product out on the field. And like I said, later in the year, you end up with some matchups that just don't even remotely matter. And I think that's going to happen more and more as you get to an 18 game schedule as well. So somebody, again, who very, very large supporter of an 18 game schedule. I kind of would rather go back to 16 than up to 18. Doesn't matter what I think. Ultimately, they're going to go to 18 no matter what. A lot of money on the table. But man, for me, if I could go back, I would say let's just keep it at 16 and you don't really need to change it because 16 is kind of great exactly the way that it was. All right. Number 5. This one's out there. I got a couple out there ones. I hope you're looking forward to this. Number 5, the NFL draft should be expanded by 3 rounds. Warp speed, no trades. Give me rounds 8 through 10. 5 minutes on the clock for each pick, maybe even 3, and no trades between those rounds. Just in the order that you finished. You could do some fun stuff with it. There's some random things that you could maybe do to change up the order a little bit. I don't think you necessarily need to go in that direction. But undrafted free agency is kind of crazy the way that it works. And guys are going through and trying to figure out how to get these guys in. And Andrew Brandt always tells the crazy stories of how one guy signed with 4 teams. And it's like, no, you can't do that. And Yeah, just like the one player, I think he thought the signing bonus is what he had to pay to the team to go to the tryouts. There's so many players that are really talented that are worthy of being drafted. And I'm just surprised. And quite frankly, I think it's silly not to add 3 rounds. I'm sure the Players Association does not want it, but I think from a viewership standpoint, again, I don't know that people are clamoring for 3 more rounds of TV viewership on NFL draft weekend. I don't even know that you need to, even if you just like did it warp speed and then listed it out. I just think there's too many talented players left that, you give me another 100 players that get selected in the draft, or in this case, 96. And I think it's worth it rather than these teams having to give out these crazy bonuses to try to lure an undrafted free agent to their team. We see it every single year. So eliminate some of that craziness and the wild, wild west of undrafted free agency. Just add 3 very quick, very aggressive. Doesn't even have to be televised if you don't want. You can just put it up online later. To me, it's worth it. And I think it would be a fun one just to add those few rounds. And again, you just get more players who actually get drafted as well, which is never a bad thing. All right. Number 6, NFL defensive coverage has changed. I understand that there's a lot of panic, trepidation, fear about the Packers cornerbacks in particular. Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine, Javon Bullard, any other corners that you want to put on that list. And I understand that fear and trepidation. But what I will tell you is the brand of football that Jeff Hafley played this past year. There's no guarantee it's going to be apples to apples. The brand of football that he played was very zone heavy, and it's very much changed with the way that teams play and what type of corners that you need. I'm not saying you can just get by with anybody, but I do think that if you have smart, communicative corners who have good ball skills and can rally and tackle, you don't need prime Darrelle Revis or Champ Bailey or Charles Woodson or, Tremont Williams or anything like that. You can get by with having guys maybe like Valentine, Hobbs, and Nixon, with Javon Bullard and any other corners you want to get out there. I think that with your ability to keep eyes on the quarterback, and again, communication being a real key to this, if you can do those things, if you can rally to the football and tackle and communicate, you're in a really good spot. Like Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs primarily bring that. If there's anything I'm actually concerned about, it might actually be the tackling a little bit more than the coverage. I didn't think Nate Hobbs was quite as good as a tackler as maybe he gets credit for. Nixon's mostly fine. Valentine, we saw, had some issues. So I think that corner group actually needs to shore up their tackling. I'm actually a little bit more worried about that than I am the actual coverage. I know they all can cover their spot in zone coverage. I'm not super concerned about that. So again, I think with the way that Jeff Hafley plays defense and the way that zone coverage has really changed, I think the Packers have more than enough at corner. And I'm not worried about the Justin Jeffersons and Jordan Addisons and some of these players ultimately putting up, crazy numbers because Green Bay is going to go man to man all game or anything. It's just not going to happen. They're going to play zone coverage. They're going to keep things in front of them. And I think they're set up to play a very good brand of football that way. Would I have loved one more cover corner? Sure, absolutely. But I think they have more than enough. And with the way the NFL coverage has changed, that you can rest a little bit easier that Jeff Hafley is going to find a way to utilize those players, put them in positions to be successful. Number 7 is another crazy one. There's an NFL coach in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that is not working right now that should get hired by the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers should hire Mike McCarthy. I'm being serious. All right, so hear me out. It's not going to happen. I totally understand that. And it makes for strange bedfellows, right? Like, how do you bring in the former head coach that got fired for the current head coach? It's awkward. Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's not. But for both sides, it kind of just makes sense. Mike McCarthy could probably benefit from seeing how Green Bay and this sort of next generation of coaches like Matt LaFleur works things and can add to his resume by being a consultant for Matt LaFleur, just the way that like Robert Saleh was, and bringing some ideas to both the offense and defense in Green Bay. This is a very bright head coach in Mike McCarthy, who literally brought the most recent Super Bowl trophy that Green Bay has had to Green Bay, that is living in Green Bay, that has a street named after him. You can't tell me that guy couldn't help the organization in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying hire him to a major role. I'm saying just hire him as a consultant, get him in the building, or even just let him work from home, do whatever you need to do. But the guy is right there. One of the smarter NFL minds out there is in your town, and he's not working for you. Like, that just seems weird to me. And again, I get it's awkward. I get it makes for a little bit of weird whatever. I don't care. Go get Mike McCarthy, add him to the staff in some capacity. Let it benefit the Packers. Let it benefit McCarthy. Then he can go on next year and probably get his next coaching job to wherever that might end up being in 2026. But Mike McCarthy should get hired by the Green Bay Packers. Number 8, speaking of which, who could be that new Robert Saleh in 2025? I think there's 3 names that I would keep an eye on if things go poorly in either of the situations. Mike McDaniel in Miami. If things do not go well there, he could eventually be on the chopping block. And that could be one where he ultimately becomes a consultant for some team. San Francisco, I'm sure, would be in the bidding, but so would Green Bay, maybe Sean McVay and the Rams as well. But I think Green Bay has sort of a pathway for this. They've utilized it on multiple occasions. I could see Mike McDaniel, or again, Zach Taylor, if things don't go well in Cincinnati and they get off to a bad start, or Raheem Morris, who Matt LaFleur worked with in Washington and in Atlanta. Could see any of those 3, if they become available, that Matt LaFleur would potentially be interested in having them become the next Robert Saleh and preparing either himself or Jeff Hafley or both for the upcoming week and kind of doing some advanced scouting stuff. All right, number 9, there's always this weird situation where you have to figure out if you want to do something or if you want to do nothing. I think the Packers defensive tackle situation is a great example of this. I think there are times where we look at specifically the Packers defensive tackles this offseason and say, you need to do something. You've got Kenny Clark that's getting a little bit older. Wooden and Brooks didn't exactly take massive steps in 2024. And Devontae Wyatt, we kind of have seen it. No, he's not playing 500 snaps or anything like that. Maybe you can get him a little bit more. But now you're losing TJ Slayton, and you've added, Nazir Stackhouse and undrafted free agency and, Warren Brinson. It's just not, it's not a ton. So you go back and look at it and you say, well, Green Bay should have done more. Well, TJ Slayton signed a deal with Cincinnati that I probably wouldn't have wanted in Green Bay. Meanwhile, the other top free agents, Milton Williams, Treshaun Wharton, Javon Hargrave, Javon Kinlaw, Delvin Tomlinson, Grady Jarrett, Malik Collins, Poona Ford, Bobby Brown, Sheldon Rankins, all went for more money than I would want to spend if I were the Green Bay Packers. So to me, those didn't all make sense. How about in the draft? Well, a lot of the guys went, or a couple of guys went early round 1. Tyreek Williams went round 1. He could have been there, or he was there for Green Bay. I wouldn't have wanted them to take him in round 1. I wouldn't have really wanted Darius Alexander in round 2. I could have been talked into Deion Walker in round 3, maybe rather than, Savion Williams. But I really like Savion Williams, and I don't know that Deion Walker would have changed all that much for this team. Josh Farmer in the 4th, sure, I could have understood that. Pegues, I should say, JJ Pegues, who's the 6th rounder for the Raiders. That would be one where I think you could make an argument for that I would have taken him over Colin Oliver. But I'm really excited to see what Colin Oliver can do too. And you just end up in this weird situation where I really wanted Green Bay to do more at defensive tackle. But I look at the draft, I look at free agency, I look at re-signing their own guys. There's no real option available. So Green Bay takes Warren Brinson in round 6, signs Nazir Stackhouse amongst other undrafted and, veteran random guys, right? And for the most part, it looks like it's going to be Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Kenny Clark, and Devontae Wyatt. And again, you end up in this weird situation where it's not perfect. You would probably like them to do maybe something a little bit more there, but there's nothing more that could have been done that I would have really enjoyed from them either. And just you end up in this weird situation of it's like, do something. Well, which moves would you have wanted them to do? The answer for me is kind of none, outside of maybe Josh Farmer in the 4th or Pegues in the 5th. Probably just ready to kind of go in a different direction and hope that Colby Wooden or Carl Brooks can step up. Same with Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt, and just play a lot better brand of football than they did in 2024 combined. Number 10, last but not least, it's almost here. 15 days away from day 1 of Packers training camp from today. 23 days from the Hall of Fame game, Chargers and Lions playing each other. 25 days away from family night. 32 days away from the preseason game, Packers Jets. 49 days until cutdown day, 58 days until Cowboys Eagles, and 61 days until Packers Lions. I cannot wait. I'm so freaking ready. And of course, over the next couple weeks, we will get you all set for Packers training camp. Cannot wait. I do have one bonus one for you before I get out of here. I may have talked about this before. I can't remember. I want a WWE style heavyweight championship belt that exists in the NFL. That here's how it would work. So start it. You know what? Start it with the Friday night game this year. All right, we're just going to start it. We're going to start it brand new Friday night game this year. What do we have for the Friday nighter? I think it's what, Chargers Chiefs, right? Yeah, Chargers Chiefs. It seems good. You could start it with Cowboys Eagles too if you wanted. Maybe you could do that too, but maybe give it a primetime game. So Chiefs Chargers, Friday, September 5th is going to be for the very first ever. We'll call it the NFL championship belt. All right. Let's say the Chiefs beat the Chargers. Chiefs hold the championship belt week 1. Week 2, Chiefs go to, let's see, where do the Chiefs go? Chiefs play the Eagles in week 2. Let's say the Eagles take it off the Chiefs in week 2. Eagles win, they get the championship belt. Week 3, Eagles play the Rams. Eagles defend. They are the reigning defending champs. They beat the Rams that year or that week. They retain the title going into that week. And then you get to the next week and the Eagles play the Buccaneers. Let's say the Buccaneers get the upset. Buccaneers now hold the championship. And you basically just go for forever. From now until forever, you have a championship belt that just makes its way around the league. And you might not even see that championship belt for years. It could end up in the AFC. In the team that has it might be a team that you don't play, that year in the AFC. You might not see it for a very long period of time. And I think that's kind of what makes it fun is you have this one traveling belt that is going to go from team to team. And I think you could do some really fun stuff with it. Like the team that wins or has the belt at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, gets every player on the team gets some sort of bonus, and you get the team gets an extra, let's just say the very first pick of day 3 of the draft, the very first 4th round pick or something. You could just do fun stuff with it where it just adds a little bit of intrigue to that game. If week 16 rolls around, 16 is a really bad example because actually 16 might work. Let's see. Packers Bears is a big game. Let's say Packers Giants, right? Let's say somehow the Giants held the belt when the Packers played the Giants this year. And it's just it's Packers Giants, whatever. But now it's Packers Giants with the championship belt on the line. And the Packers could be the one that holds the championship belt, and then they could retain it until they lose again. And again, it's just something a little bit more fun to kind of keep an eye on through the course of the season. It's silly. It's stupid. I think it should be in the NBA. I think it should be in Major League Baseball. I think it should be in hockey. I think it should be everywhere. There should be a champion where you pin the champ, or in this case, beat the champ. You're the champ. And it's as simple as that. And rules apply. If you tie, you don't, the team that held the championship gets to retain the championship. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And to me, I think that would add a little bit of intrigue and excitement. So that is my bonus number 11. I want a NFL WWE style championship belt. You win the game. There's a little celebration after the game. The quarterback gets to go and accept the belt and put it around his waist. I'm all in. I would love this idea. And again, put some things around it where it would be beneficial for the team, the players, the fans, if they actually held the belt at the end of the year or at any given time, or if they defended it the most. You could do so many different things. But I love this idea of a traveling belt, and I just think it adds a little bit of intrigue to those games. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Random thoughts in review. Should absolutely care about how the Packers use their resources. But once they use those resources, just become a fan of the player. I hate injuries, wish they didn't exist. And I really hate when we pick on players because they're hurt. I get it sucks, but most of the time it's not their fault. I wish, or I should say I was wrong about having more regular season games. I think 16 was actually the right number. NFL draft should be expanded by 3 rounds. NFL coverage has changed. And I think you're going to see this Packers secondary play very well in this new style of NFL coverage. Packers should hire Mike McCarthy. You heard that right. The new Robert Saleh could potentially be Mike McDaniel, Zach Taylor, or Raheem Morris if any of them get fired through the course of this season. Doing something versus doing nothing. Sometimes doing nothing is the right move. I still struggle with defensive tackle for Green Bay. I don't know if doing nothing was the right move, but I don't really like any of the somethings that they could potentially have done other than maybe JJ Pegues in the 5th round over Colin Oliver. But again, I really like Colin Oliver. And then it's almost here. Again, season is 61 days away, 15 days away until day 1 of training camp. And last but not least, give me a WWE style NFL championship belt. All right, that's going to do it again for me today. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, Dave McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Hwang, Peter Ritaka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gessford, Dylan Patscott, SoCal Pat, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Carlo Delgado, Willie Winkle-Stinkle, Jen Wright, The Gable Storm, Matt Geiger, Pack Attack Cast, Chris Weish, and Griff Hen Blee. I'll see you guys soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.